episode 205. This week we're answering the question, if he hates it, why on earth would you do it more often? Oh, this is such a great question. We're going to have so much fun covering this one because I think we hear that a lot from our owners, but we also hear that from the non-dog trainers. A lot of dog pros who aren't dog trainers might also question this. So we're going to break it down this week. You're listening to the Creating Great Grooming Dog Show. I'm Chrissy Neumeyer Smith. I'm a master groomer behavior specialist, master canine stylist, master certified grooming expert, certified behavior consultant for canines, certified professional dog trainer, fear-free certified in grooming and training, an educator and dean of academics at the Whole Pet Grooming Academy. And this, my friends and colleagues, is the show where we talk about teaching pets to be good for grooming and other types of care. What I really want you to understand about why we would do things more often is that we're not asking the pet to endure something that they find frightening. I think people are like, but he hates it. And so every experience is going to be something that's terrifying or scary or unpleasant. But what we want to do is we want to set up pleasant experiences. This is an entirely different way than what you're thinking. If you're thinking, well, I'm only going to bring him in every 6 months if I can because he just hates it so much. We're not trying to force your pet through something and make them endure it more often. Okay. And I don't know who needs to hear this, but I'm going to throw this out there. We know that fails. Okay. So even if you're thinking, well, bringing him in more often and eventually he'll get used to it, only if we are making progress, only if we are trying to make this more pleasant. If we just bring him in more often and get the thing done, that is not what I'm talking about at all. We're switching from, is this a nail trim appointment or a grooming appointment, to, is this a learning session? Is this a training session? And everybody think about that for a minute, because I know I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. Don't expect your dog groomer to be a dog trainer. That's not their job. A lot of groomers are interested in the dog training part. A lot of groomers are out there learning about it and wanting to do it. But if they ask you like, hey, I need to see him more often, what they're trying to do is help your pet learn that this isn't scary. And that is so different than making him endure something terrifying. We don't want your dog to hate it. If we're asking you to bring him in more often, it's probably so that we can work on the behavior part, do it as lessons, stop thinking about it in terms of, are we getting the grooming done? Are we getting the bath done? He's going to need to be dried all over. We're going to work on drying his head today and get it completed. And I know for a long time in the grooming industry, that was the way we did things. And it is no longer current. That is not the way we should be doing things. And I haven't been doing things that way for a long time, but I think especially in this modern atmosphere where there's so much access to continuing education, I provide an awful lot of continuing education. So if you have a groomer or an owner, send them to this show. Send them to me. But if we start thinking about, I want this dog to learn to be comfortable with this, they may never like it. I know for a lot of dog trainers, that one's kind of like, oh, but I want them to like it. And I do too. But frankly, do we enjoy going to the dentist or going to the doctor? There are just some things that you're like, We can teach a dog to feel safe. We can teach a dog to be calm, comfortable, and cooperative, something I say a lot on this show because that is our goal. The perfect grooming experience, think about this, is a dog who is calm. They're able to take it all in. They're like, yeah, okay. They're comfortable with our tools. They're physically comfortable. So if they have illnesses or hip problems or whatever, we're also making sure that they're physically comfortable. And then they are cooperating with us, which is different than obedient. Cooperative takes two. It means that if they indicate that they're a little uncomfortable, I'm going to pause and see if I can help them be comfortable. When we do things like that, and then we work slowly and gently, progressively toward the goal of calm, comfortable, and cooperative, our goal is a dog who doesn't hate it. But here's the other part that I want you to think about, why we need to do it more often. If I taught you something today, and then we don't touch it at all again for 8 weeks, how much are you going to retain? How much do you think you're going to remember? Not much. And so if we want to learn something, we need to do it with more frequency. We need to practice. And maybe that's not with the groomer. Maybe you're an owner who's like, I'm happy to practice stuff at home. And there's a future episode about things that you can practice at home. But maybe it's a collaborative thing where, the owner is working on stuff. You've sent them with some homework. You're the groomer. You're working on stuff. We're letting go of perfect trims. This isn't about the hair cutting, the styling, the nail trimming, getting the grooming procedures completed. This is now a training lesson. And don't expect every groomer to want to do that. And that's okay. Not every groomer does hand stripping. Not every groomer does hand scissoring. Know who you're going to. Find out if that's something they like to do. Find out. But doing this more often is important because repetition is how we learn things. So I have some examples for repetition. All right. If I hand you, whether you're an owner or a groomer or another pet professional, right now, if I hand you, let's say, a ball of yarn and a couple of knitting needles and show you some stuff, what do you think you'll remember if you don't pick that up again for 8 weeks? Probably not much. Probably not much at all. But I'll tell you what, you will remember if you found it really frustrating or if you found it neutral or if you found it fun. That's the kind of stuff you're going to remember in 8 weeks. So even if we have pets that we can't get in more often, the owner's like, well, we're just going to deal with this every time he gets a haircut. It's going to be very, very slow progress, but we can still work toward, I want you to feel comfortable with me and I want you to trust me. But we can make a lot more progress if we actually practice. We do this in dog training all the time. You go to an average obedience class or puppy class when they're little. You go once a week and you have all your homework you're supposed to work on during the week. This is not a new idea. And we can transfer this to grooming processes. And we should be. And many of us have been for many, many years. So when an owner says, hey, I don't understand why you would want me to bring him in more often. Like nobody wants to groom him. He doesn't want to be groomed. Well, let's just get it done when it needs to be done, is setting that dog up to fail. It's going to make that problem much, much worse. And I know somebody out there is like, wait, how much worse could it get? So let's imagine you have a dog who is really healthy at this point and he hates it, quote unquote, hates it, because what does that actually mean? Becomes aggressive or is trembling and shaking and scared. And then as that dog gets older, let's say that dog is now 14 and starting to have other health issues and has a heart problem and maybe seizure disorders and stuff. And the groomer says, he's never really liked it, but I'm just not comfortable grooming him anymore. Oh, now what are you going to do? That was preventable. Yeah, I know. So right now, look at the young dogs that you're grooming who are nice and healthy, or the adult dogs who are nice and healthy, and start thinking, if I can teach this pet to trust us now, when he is older and he actually has some health problems, we're not going to have to turn him away. We're not going to have to try to sell an owner the, I'm going to say the big myth of, oh, send them to the veterinarian for sedation grooming. And that is a big myth. Let's talk about that myth. I'm glad you're here enjoying the free stuff. If you're wondering, does Chrissy go into any more detail? Yeah, I do. I do that in the Master Groomer Behavior Specialist program, which is about 9 months to complete. We meet every week and we have modules online followed by live recordings. And then at the end, you're doing all sorts of the techie stuff that really doesn't fit into this podcast. So if you are interested, the next round of Master Groomer Behavior Specialist starts on Monday, July 6th, and that round will meet at 7 p.m. Eastern every week on Mondays. So that's Monday, July 6th. If you want to know more, wholepetnh.com and look for the Master Groomer Behavior Specialist program, or you can go to creatinggreatgroomingdogs.com and take a look around there too. I'd send them to a groomer at a vet's office because there is a doctor there. And so if this dog does have a medical emergency, which with some of our older dogs or our dogs with known health problems, that's a great choice. If there's a medical emergency, if this dog has a problem there's a veterinarian on site. But the idea that they can do something different for grooming, a lot of these dogs are not good candidates for being sedated for grooming because now they're 14 and they have a lot of health problems. Think about how many pets the owner's like, well, if we have to put them under sedation for something else, maybe we'll take care of that little mole or that whatever it is, but we're really worried about his heart murmur. Maybe they're really worried about knocking him out for some procedure. And we're saying, like, oh, yeah, every 8 weeks you're going to knock him out for a grooming. It's not going to happen. Okay. What if instead we spend our time working on teaching this dog to trust us and that it's safe? Because that can have a lasting impression later. And how do we do that? Repetition, repetition, repetition. Why do you guys know the terms calm, comfortable, and cooperative? Because I repeat it so often. That's why. Well, repetition is how we learn. So I want you to think about if the dog doesn't like something and we want them to be able to handle it, we need to do more repetition. So I'm going to give you another example too. Let's say, because I do fly ball, let's say you only practice once every 8 weeks and you don't work on anything at home. How long do you think it's going to take for your dog to even learn a box turn, which is when they're at the end of the lane and they hit the box, get the ball once every 8 weeks? Probably gonna take you a couple years. How long do you think it would take for your dog to be able to actually go down the lane, do the box turn, get the ball, carry it back over with no distractions? Yeah, years. If you're only doing something once every 2 months or once a month with no practicing in between, like that's somebody else's job. Do not let owners try to tell you that it's your job. Dog trainers don't put up with that. We're like, you need to be on board with this and you need to be working on this because I don't live with your dog. If you are only working on it once a month, like an hour or two a month, an hour or two every 2 months, you are not going to make progress. That's why we have dogs who are 8 years old who are still terrified of things, which is ridiculous to me. But let's say that we see that we have a problem, we're going to identify it, and we're going to work on it in a variety of ways. Maybe that's some owner homework. Maybe that's the groomer seeing that dog once a week for a little while until that problem through training has resolved. What? Resolving problems through training? Yes, training and repetition. And I know when I say it that way, it probably seems like, well, that's really common sense. But we have to let go of the idea that we're selling haircuts and nail trims. Let go of that idea. This dog is not well prepared for our services here in the grooming environment, whether that be house call, mobile, shop, whatever that environment is. This pet isn't well prepared for it. So we need to come up with some training plans to help this pet be better for it. That is why, even if a dog really hates doing something, quote unquote hates, because that's very, very subjective. But even if a pet generally has had some bad experiences or gets scared or becomes aggressive, which is a fear response, okay? You behave aggressively because you are uncomfortable with something. You don't behave aggressively with things that you're comfortable with. So think about that, okay? But what if we work on that problem without trying to do the nail trim? We're working on the training part. And like I said, a lot of groomers do not want to do this. Or they want to, and they're ready to do it, and they're having trouble explaining it to a customer in a way that a customer's like, oh, all right, this is a unique place with a unique set of tools and skills that I really can't entirely train at home. You might think you can train all the things at home if you're a dog trainer and you're like, listen, I know my dog. I can train all the things at home. You might feel that way, but there are things about the grooming environment that are really tricky. We all have different equipment. It's not like you can say like, oh, and the dog understands clippers, because we all have a variety of clippers. I mean, most groomers have clippers and trimmers and like 3 or 4 versions, never mind all the other things that are available. So think about repetition, repetition, repetition to make something better. I'm going to share a story and then I'll wrap it up. I had a dog in 2001 who ripped her dew claw when we were out in the field playing around. And after that dew claw healed, when I would do her nails, it was that one dew claw that she was still kind of scared and hesitant about. She'd brace herself for it. I hope you guys can understand what I mean by that, but kind of like the deep breath and the turning away and the leaving her paw in the hand, but clearly not comfortable with it. Now, what Chrissy in 2001 did, before I knew any better, before I really thought about it, was I only did that during nail trimming. What I would change now is that, oh my God, what was I thinking? I even live with this dog. I could have been working on touching that nail every day as the owner. If she were a grooming customer, I could have said, can you just bring her in once a week and we're just going to work on touching that nail and getting the clippers near it and just getting her used to that again. But instead, I only worked on it when we needed to do nail trimming. And I'd say it took about a year for her to be comfortable with it again. Oh, Chrissy of 2001. I know, you were so close, but you didn't hit the mark. So it's an example of it's going to take a lot longer if we're not treating it like a training problem, if we're treating it like, oh, well, we'll just take care of that every time we need to get the thing done, which also means that every time I did nails, I completed trimming that dew claw. And you might be thinking, well, yeah, that's the job. But what if training doesn't involve always completing trimming the dew claw? That's the reason why we want to see them more often. What if we can get them comfortable with us reaching for the dew claw? What if we can get them comfortable with us lining up the clippers on the dew claw before we need to trim it, before it needs to be trimmed, before there's any pressure to complete the nail trimming? When we think about it that way, it becomes really clear like, oh, wait a minute. What if I had spaced that out as an owner, touching her leg more and more often, seeing what she's comfortable with, right? When we're touching, and like I said, there's a future episode for the owners, but when we're touching, we're also looking for calm, comfortable, and cooperative. So it's not about, I need to touch your leg and I need to do this thing and making them all nervous. We don't want nervous. If you're doing it right, it's about as interesting as watching paint dry. So what we're doing is we're trying to figure out where her comfort zone is and expand on it, right? As an example, what I would do differently with the dog that I had in 2001. What would I do differently now? Is as an owner, I would be working on her being comfortable with me reaching for that area and working on touching that area as she became more comfortable with it. And I would only work on the nail trimming part when she was ready. So instead of taking a year for her to be comfortable with it, I'm pretty confident it would have taken, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks. And that's the other part. When we say bring a dog in more often, it's to do the foundation work so that you can have effortless grooming later. This is foundation work. This is really important basic stuff so that this dog can be a breeze to groom later. So think about it. Even if the owner's like, I mean, if he hates it, why on earth would I bring him in more often? Because we're trying to teach him that it's safe. And we have a lot of things to work on before we can be completing the things that he thinks are unsafe, the things that he thinks are scary, unpleasant, uncomfortable, and or scary. We need to work on that feeling. We need to work on how to do it with them. Every dog is going to be different. I know that's frustrating for people, but every dog's going to be different. But we need to work on slowly and gently progressing and helping them feel safe. And then that lasts a lifetime, which is pretty cool.